Hi guys, this is Sammy here from Mex, and this is episode 3 of Chatting with Professionals. And as you can hear, my voice is a bit croaky. I'm recovering from the dreaded man flu. I've been coughing so much, it's gone a bit wrong. But anyway, today I have got the privilege of chatting to Paul Palmer this morning, and we're going to be discussing what he does. And the topic of this is mainly about how do you protect your assets as the ageing population gets older and suddenly potentially go into care. How do we stop the council from taking the assets from the families, and how do we put more money back into the pockets of the families?
My name is Paul Palmer from Accord Legal Services, probably one of the biggest will writing companies in the country. We deal with wills, trusts, probate and estate planning, making sure that everybody's got the right will in place and not the wrong will, which can kind of upset the apple cart when you want to leave your legacies behind.
Yeah, I guess at the moment with an ageing population, like I touched on, how many people are currently going into care these days?
Basically, it's estimated that 1 in 3 of us are going to need some kind of care or care assistance.
Wow.
So a third of the population, basically. And the reason for that is because we're all living a lot longer. I mean, I've got lots of clients that are actually over 100.
Wow.
My oldest client was 112. She unfortunately passed away just before the pandemic started, but 112. And I was dealing with her son, who was 86. So it just shows you.
It does show.
Unfortunately, our faculties are not keeping up with our age. Medical science is keeping us living longer.
But our brains
are not quite there yet.
Yeah.
And that's where the issue is. And that's why we need assistance with care.
Yes, I understand that totally. We've got ageing family, around us at the moment as well. So in terms of like care, because I guess as you get older, you lose your faculties, you need care, you need assistance. Yep. So I guess you can get in-house care or you can go to a care home. Mm-hmm. What are the typical costs that you're hearing of a care home on a weekly or a yearly basis for clients?
Well, if you do an average across the country, you're not getting any change over £1,000 a week.
Wow.
The further south you go into the London, the home counties, you can turn them to £1,500, £2,000 a week.
Huge figures.
So they are massive figures. And what actually happens there is that it's a cruel scenario that the local authorities put forward, because they means test you, and that means if you've got more than £23,250 in your assets, anything above that will be means tested. The first thing they do is they look to see what cash you have and take that from you. Secondly, once the cash is gone, and you can imagine it doesn't last long.
No,
if you go into a care home, you might do 20 years in a care home. Wow. That money's going to go. So what do? They look at your property, and they look at the property and either force a sale or at least put a charge on it, depending on your situation. And that's how nearly £200,000 a year are lost to care.
Wow. And if you think about the average price of a home in the UK, at like nearly 300 grand, the figures start adding up quick, don't they? So what can people do to stop the care homes or the council just basically taking the properties off them?
Well, it's a fine line really, Sammy. Basically what you've got is there are 2 types of people I deal with. There are the type of people where the son or the daughter will come and say to me, "Oh, I think mum might need care, dad might need care. Can you help us because we've heard you can protect your property?" That is a big no-no, okay? Because what you can't be seen to be doing is a deprivation of assets. So if you know there's going to be something wrong with you or if something's going to happen in the near future, you can't do anything about saving your property that way. Okay. You're going to have to go through the motions of whatever the local authorities say. Okay. This is where estate planning comes into play. The earlier you do your estate planning, the more you're going to protect yourself. And the way that happens is that we move what is potentially a vulnerable asset. Now, your vulnerable asset, it can be owned by an individual or normally jointly owned. So we take those assets and we move them into what we call a living will trust. Now, the living will trust basically ring fences your assets for you, which means you can't get third-party creditors, for example, like the taxman or the care feed authorities, local authorities. They can't get at that because it's now no longer one of your assets.
This is while both people are living at both
people living in the house, right? But because of the way the will trust is set up, it's not a trust where you've got to wait for somebody to die before something happens. It's set up in such a way that it's making the 2 people, the husband and wife or partners, the primary beneficiaries of their own trust. So although they've moved everything sideways, the trust is still in their name, but it's governed and controlled by the trustees on their behalf.
Trustees could be the children, could be sibling, could be brother and sister.
It can be anybody over the age of 18 that they trust and love and warrant it being looked after by those two people.
And then once it's in the trust, does it make it a little bit less, makes it difficult for the councils to come and take the property, or does it make it completely impossible for the councils to take the property for care home fees?
Again, let's move away from the impossible, because
Okay.
depending on the timing of when you've done this, right, as long as there's nothing imminent that you need care and assistance for, by all means you can put your property into trust. Once it's gone into that trust, you're protected. It's making sure that you're ring fencing, as I said, everything you put in the trust. Now that can be your property. You can even put money in the property if you, in the trust if you want to. So you're protecting assets as well as the property, and making sure that if then in the future somebody does need assistance, if you go back to that 1 in 3 statistic, it's quite a lot of people.
Yeah.
When the time comes, the local authorities could only means test your vulnerable assets, if any. Anything that's in the trust will be protected.
Mm-hmm. So if during the process that one of the parents died and the property was in trust to the trustees,
Yeah.
what happens to the surviving parent? Are they at risk, and can the trustees, have they got any power to force a sale on the remaining parent who's surviving?
No, because the way the will trust will be set up will be, it will be safeguarding the individual that's remaining in the house, okay? And the two trustees will make sure that that's happening, because that's why they've been nominated as trustees in the first place, okay? You've also got somebody that's called a protector, which is a bit like, you've heard me mention lasting power of attorney before.
Yeah.
Well, it's like if you lose mental capacity, the protector will step in on behalf of the person that's put the trust together to make sure everything's still working for them. So the two trustees and the protector will make sure that nothing like that can happen. Nobody can force a sale of the property, because you are literally protecting everything you've got.
So the people, the surviving parent, totally protected. There's no issue. No one can come in and force a sale. One of the siblings, for example, couldn't do anything to try and disrupt any of the trust which is in place. It's completely protected. I think that's important for people to know that, because some families out there may not be totally aware that it's protected in that way. So, for example, one of the parents died, the property is in trust, that obviously half of the house which goes to the trustees, the remaining half of the property, if that remaining parent goes into care, what happens to the other half of the property which is left with the trustees? Can the council come for either half of it or none of it at all?
No, it's protected, but you've got to bear a couple of things in mind. If you were a trustee, you're not going to be benefiting immediately from whatever the assets are.
Okay.
Because as a trustee, you are making sure that the asset is working for the donor themselves. Okay. If they are children, they'll benefit in the future when both parents have gone.
Yeah.
But as trustees, as working trustees of the trust, they can't benefit. Okay. But what you've actually got is, in that scenario, everything's still protected in the trust. And it's got to be protected on behalf of that person that's put the trust together. So you, as the primary beneficiary, whether you're at home, whether you're in a care home, whether you're getting assistance at home, you're still protected.
Okay.
So it's always got to be for the benefit of the person that's put the trust together.
Okay, and how long does a property need to be in trust before it becomes 100% effective? Or is it effective from the day that it's put into trust? Because I've heard rumours that you've got like a 7-year window of during the process of putting a house into some sort of protection. In the first 7 years, the council can actually come in and claim some of the assets. Is that true? Is that not true?
If you are somebody who has got no imminency of going into care, that 7-year window doesn't really exist. Okay. Because what you've actually got is going to see a couple of people, writing all the information down from them, and I, on face value, look and estimate that the person's not going to be in care, not going to be doing anything that's going to lead them into care in the near future. Okay. Now, I haven't got a crystal ball, but all of a sudden, in a couple of years' time, if all of a sudden they've then gone into care, when I actually write the instructions for them, and there was nothing going on there, nothing that implied that they were ever going to go into care, that's fine. So this 7-year window gets a little bit misconstrued sometimes, because it's relevant to other things, and those other things are when you're gifting properties and things
Okay.
like that, you'll pay a gift tax and everything, but that's getting more complex.
That's a different
different scenario.
So essentially, when you want to put your property into trust, it's about acting now rather than later.
The earlier you do these things, I would say to people, when you're approaching your 40s, you've probably got your house, you've probably got a couple of kids now. That's when you need to start
Really?
looking at this.
That young?
I get people that, in their 30s, 40s and 50s who pass away. I've had lots of clients. It's the nature of the beast that I do. We're not immortal. Some people like to think they are.
Yeah.
And at that age, potentially, you do think you're going to be living forever.
Yeah, you do, yeah.
But when the big finger points at you and it's your turn, you're gone. And you can leave a mess behind if you haven't put the right things in place.
Wow. So start as soon as you basically have any assets, I guess. You've got to start financially planning.
Once you start your assets and you start to build a little portfolio for yourself, your own little mini empire, you need to protect that as much as, because at the end of the day, Sammy, what do you want to do? You've got kids yourself. You want to get the Sammy Mubarak empire, and you want to pass that on as a legacy to your kids. You don't want somebody knocking on the kids' door, if you ever need care or just before you go, and they're going to take that money from them. You want to pass as much to the kids as possible.
Of course, it's about leaving everything to them, and obviously getting that planned and put in place properly now, then obviously waiting until it's too late and then it's a mess. We've dealt with probates and I know what it's like, the time it takes, the headache it causes, the stress it puts on the families.
And there are certain limits and limitations that you can actually put into the trust. There's various things you can put in, things you can't put in, but you can put to certain levels into these type of trusts. And going back to your 7-year scenario, every 7 years you can top your trust up and make sure that as you're working, and that's the point of doing it sooner rather than later, because if you're an 80-plus-year-old person, you're doing these trusts now, those 7 years are few and far between.
Yeah.
Somebody in their 40s, you've got a good few, hopefully 7 years ahead of you.
So if anyone watching this video needs to get in contact with you, how would they start that? Is it just to pick up the phone and give you a call? Do you want an email? Do you want an introduction? How would you like someone to, obviously there's going to be a lot of questions people are going to ask you from this video.
Yeah.
How would you prefer them to give you a call or email?
Initially, drop me an email.
Yeah.
So, there's an interest there, and then I'll get back to them within 24 hours and get the ball rolling for them. Initially, I'll set up an appointment to come and see them in their own house.
Face to face?
Face to face. And see what they've got, see who they are, what they've got, and where they want it to end up.
Okay. So, it's been great chatting with you, and obviously the things you've been mentioning resonate in my head a lot at the moment. So, I guess for the people watching the video, if you're interested in what Paul's talking about, the details will be on the content of the video. Drop him an email, maybe call him, and set up an appointment to see you and discuss the planning of your assets, because you don't want people taking it off you if you can protect it at this early stage now. So thank you for watching, and thanks for your time on the video today, Paul.
Pleasure.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thanks very much.